It looks like we got a call. We have Frank waiting.
Oh, okay. Let's take Frank. Hi, Frank.
Hello. How are you doing?
Good.
Wow. Thank you very much for taking my call. Pleasure talking to both of you. The reason why I called tonight, I am an atheist, but the reason why I want to call tonight is just that we could discuss this whole Christian canard about, how they try to dismiss the Old Testament because of all the barbarity and the slavery and all the terrible things there. They say, well, that was the New Testament. Well, so that was the Old Testament, and now we go by the New Testament. And this is that entire line of that whole dogma is less than 100 years old. It's very, very recent, because up to 100 years ago, a lot of people didn't have problems with all the barbarity that was in the Old Testament, so they didn't need to make excuse. But as society went along further, they came up with this canard to try, just know your thoughts on that.
Well, I think. Yep.
Oh, you go ahead first.
Well, I think not only did they not have problems, I think they weren't being challenged on it. I think that there was such, what do you call it, a monopoly on religious thought. And I assume that you're talking about the United States and probably Western civilization when it comes to Christianity. But specifically in the United States, there was no other religions. There was no other kind of dogma challenging what the Bible taught. So people could just go about their lives a lot like they do now and not ever read it and not even care. Just follow the plan. Go to church on Sundays, pay attention for an hour, and then come home and be the person that you are outside of church. But, then you have a growth of atheism where people start recognizing, look, I don't want to be treated like this anymore. Or you have other religions starting to immigrate into the country, and they say, well, why should I have to do that, et cetera, et cetera. And you start seeing Catholicism and Christianity get challenged, and now they have to say, well, that was the way it was before, which of course only brings up more challenges, right? Because I love the argument, oh, well, God got it wrong, didn't he? Can God be wrong? And then that's a whole other discussion. But that's my thought on that.
I would just accept it. I mean, like, okay, fine. That was in the Old Testament. You guys have now the New Testament, but the New Testament, based on your ideology, these are the same people, right? You have Jesus, you have Yahweh, you have the God, the Father and the Son are the same people. And at some point, Jesus, who was Yahweh at that point, was cool with genocide. Right? So you're saying he's not cool with it anymore.
Yeah.
Are you admitting by saying he's not cool with it anymore, are you admitting that the God that you worship was at a time okay with genocide? Because I remember in the Old Testament, this God guy, he was commanding his people to go kill the men, women, and children, specifically mentioning in the Old Testament, and their animals and any living thing, to go kill them. So God, your God in the Old Testament, specifically ordered people to go kill children. So, and you could be like, your defense is that he did that for a temporary, like that was before. Okay, well, that's a weird defense. But by saying that was a temporary period, but that was temporary, you're admitting that he did that at some point.
Well, I think
right.
I think what it is more. I think it's more akin to what happens is it's like 1984 and like by Orwell. It's doublethink. You're asked to hold two contradictory opinions and like you pull one out whenever it is asked for by the authority. My father was a Baptist minister for 52 years. And, my father, he was born in 1909, and he was, I'm an African-American. He was an African-American, and born in 1909. He graduated in 1932 from Philadelphia School of the Bible. And so, he was a prolific writer. And I still, you look at it, and you look at I read some of his writings and some of the things that there's some of the books that he wrote, and and some of the sermons that he taught, and you see that at that time, it was really, really, his mother was born into slavery. So it was really, really difficult for especially for African American churches and African American churches. How do they go ahead and reconcile that? Especially growing, at the time, especially in America, growing, living through Jim Crow and all those sort of things. The way how they reconciled a lot of it was divine. One part of it was, divine command theory. Because God wanted this to happen, that means, it was okay. And we just got to accept it. And this is just we're just being tested for the next, We're being we're suffering so much now, but if we believe and we do good after you die, then you go to heaven. And so I think you're expected. So I think that, there was a lot of doublethink going on there. And the reason I bring up this whole thing now is the fact that, but then it's gotten to a point where, especially in that community, like I said, I'm an atheist. I've been an atheist for 20 years now. But as part of that community, they're having, that's where a lot of struggle is coming in. And it's either ignored, especially a lot of the Old Testament. They say, well, that's just the Old Testament. We only deal with the New Testament now. But yeah, that's my thought. I just wanted, thank you.